table today, we're taking a look at a strength and honor battle, Romans versus Gauls, somewhere in southern Gaul. Who knows exactly when, but we're going to have a bit of a game. So here is the Gallic force. So here we've got some warbands. There are 5 regular warbands, and the one at the bottom right is a frenzied warband. They've got 2 units of cavalry on the right and a unit of light cavalry, and then 2 units of skirmishers. Now, when they got their command board done up, they didn't start with a lot, but they rolled quite well. And so this is how they spent their points on their command board, and their army break is 18. Now, the Roman force is much smaller. They've got 4 legions, a unit of auxilia, and a unit of skirmishers there, and some baggage at the back. They started with more command points, but they didn't roll so well. And so actually things are pretty balanced here between the 2 boards. The Roman breakpoint is 16. Now, in terms of setup, this was the table. There's a little bit of terrain on the flanks, but otherwise it's flat and open in the center. The Gallic force is a little bit more spread out, but it's also basically 2 lines deep. The Roman force is essentially a single line. And then after the skirmishers had broken off, this is what it looks like on the table. So a thin, solid line of Romans versus a ravening horde of Gauls. So the Romans took the first turn and immediately rolled a 1 for their very first move, meaning that legion marked their can't move forward. Given that, they decided not to do anything else and just wait, because otherwise, if other things move forward, they'd be breaking up their battle line. So they just left it alone and let the Gauls really take the first turn here. So the Gauls moved forward. On the left, the cavalry moved up. They're trying to flank around and take out the auxilia there. And in the middle, the general's frenzied warband charged ahead much further than the other units. So now the Romans, looking at that, going, here's an initial opportunity to stage an attack. And so they sent in that attack, and they actually rolled a 1 for the general's legion here. This is a veteran legion with the general attached. They rolled a 1, so they had to spend a generalship point to re-roll that to get the charge in. And in that charge, they did succeed in pushing the Gauls back. The Gauls did make their discipline test there, though, so they didn't break and run at this stage. That would have been a bit of a disaster. And so then the Gauls come charging back in to try and damage the Romans some here. They did manage to get a setback card on pushback, the general's unit, the veteran legions there. However, the Romans spent a point there of defense to negate the pushback so that they didn't actually have to move backwards. They still took the setback card though. And so this is how things looked at the end of the second turn here. The Gallic cavalry on the right of the picture there is starting to flank around a little bit, not looking too bad. And on the left, they're facing off against one of the experienced legions there. Okay, the Romans sent in more legions here. They rolled badly with one of their attack dice, so they rolled again, managed to get a 6 the second time, much better result, and managed to drive back the general's unit, the Gallic general's unit there. However, passed the discipline test again. Still took a setback card, but not quite as bad as it could have been. Now, other combats on the flanks actually pushed the Gauls back in such a way that they pushed them back into a solid battle line again. It was interesting, but as you can see at the back there, they collected 5 setback cards during all of that as well, so not that great for the Gauls. And so this is where we stand, the cavalry on the right of the picture here, really getting into a good position against that auxilia. Let's see what happens. So here they did manage to get around. They had to spend a movement point there to get the light cavalry into the flank, not with a charge, just with a general move, but that's setting up for future turns. The cavalry in the front charged in. However, the defense dice of the auxilia negated the 2 dice attack with a 4 beating the, a 4 equaling the 4 there. So that attack had no result. Over on the other flank, the other cavalry did manage to push back the legion in a 1 dice fight and gave the Romans a setback card. In the middle, the general's unit, with a little bit of support there, managed to hurt and push back one of the legions and give them a setback card. But this is how things look at the end of the Gauls' turn there. Trouble on the right there with the auxilia getting flanked by the cavalry, but the legion line's still looking fairly solid. And here the Romans decide to go on the attack and push forward. They do so here and manage to drive back one of the warbands in disorder. That gives a couple of setback cards to the Gauls. And they manage to do a little bit more damage in a couple of other places as well. And then given that the Gauls have 8 setback cards and a breakpoint of 18, the Romans decided to call Homunculus Est to try and fatigue the Gauls at this stage. They're not going to win the game, but they can cause the Gauls some movement difficulties here. Now, the cards turned up to be just enough. They got, 11 points here versus 18 for the Gauls' breakpoint. That means that the Gauls aren't broken, but they are fatigued. Now, the Gauls, to their benefit, do get to remove one card of their choice, so they took away a 3. Now, the Gauls pushing, they try to push forwards, and rather than going for the general's unit there with the skirmishers in front, they went for one of the other experienced legions, managed to push it back, and it failed its discipline test with a 4, and so it became disordered, and a couple of setback cards received. So here's where things stand at the end of the Gallic turn. The flank there, the auxilia, still holding up the cavalry on the side there so that they can't get to the baggage or get in behind the legions, but the rest of the warband line not looking that solid here. In the Roman turn, especially on the left, they managed to do some pushbacks on the cavalry and really get the warbands a little bit more broken up while relatively maintaining their line. The legion on the right, which is kind of at the top of the picture there, managed to push forward and push one of the other warbands back even further. A little bit exposed, but it's not in such a bad position here. Now, down here in the Gauls' turn, the Gauls took 3 dice into this fight against the auxilia, managed to push them back a little bit. And over here, the warbands charging in managed to create a little bit of a gap here. And the warband with a 6 on it there is going to try and maneuver and get into the flank of the general's legion on the right of the picture. It manages to get that move off. Now, what needs to happen next, that not being a charge, it's no combat there, but if the general's frenzied warband can move and maneuver into the face of the legion there, then that could give them some severe difficulties. However, they didn't manage to get enough movement points on the first roll, spent a generalship point, and rolled even worse on the second one. So without getting enough movement to get in there, could not make the move. Play passed to the Roman side, and the Romans tried to charge forward, rolled a 1 for the general's legion, and then after spending a generalship point to re-roll, rolled another 1. So, not so good. At the end of the turn, this is where things stand for the Romans. Not in such a great position. The auxilia down there looking very exposed and getting pushed back towards the baggage, but they haven't been broken yet. Now, in the Gauls' turn, the Gallic general frenzied warband manages to get the move off, rolls enough movement points and the maneuver test, gets in the face of the legion, and then promptly rolls double 1s for his combat results, even with the re-roll. So he gets repulsed and driven back with setbacks, not the result that they were really looking for at all. The Romans then push forward and hammer that unit that is already disordered and manage to break it, and it routes off the table. Now, lots of setback cards and 1 disaster card there for the Gauls. The Romans call Homunculus Est, and the Gauls have to spend their only strategy point to negate that call so that they're not forced to expose all of those cards. The Gauls are in a pretty tough spot here, and they try and get some points here by causing some damage on the auxilia. Unfortunately, double 1s in a 2 dice combat roll there for the light horse. That's repulsed, and not only that, it's a reversal of fortune. Play passes to the Romans. The Romans charge forward there into the flank of the disordered unit, manage to push it back, giving another setback, and then it's Homunculus Est time. And when the Gauls reveal, yeah, they're well over their breakpoint. I think they've got 25 here versus 18. So yes, a solid win to the Romans here, especially given that the Romans only had 11 points towards their break of 16. So overall, a really solid win to the Romans, but an interesting game to play out. I'll play this one again later or something similar to it and just keep trying different things and see what happens. I think man of the match may go to those auxilia at the bottom who managed to keep holding off 2 units of cavalry throughout the entire fight. Anyway, let me know what you think of the battle. Interested in your comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again real soon.